The room is silent. The only sound is a mother's soft breathing. It's a rare Saturday morning off for Sarah, a precious chance to connect with her quiet, withdrawn son, Leo. She decides to tidy up his closet and she freezes. A smell hits her. It's sweet, cloying, and rotten. She pushes aside a pile of shoes and sees it. A crumpled brown bag tucked away in the corner. Inside, 3 mangoes. They were once golden and perfect. Now they're brown, bruised, and crawling with fuzzy grey mold. A cloud of fruit flies buzzes angrily into the air. Behind her, a floorboard creaks. Sarah turns slowly. Her 8-year-old son Leo is standing in the doorway. He's trembling, his face a mask of pure terror. Sarah lifts the rotting fruit, her voice just a whisper. "Leo, where did these come from?" To understand the terror in that silence, to grasp how a simple piece of fruit became a symbol of pure horror, we have to go back. We have to see the fortress that was built around Leo's small, fragile world. We all learn rules as kids, right? Look both ways before you cross the street. Don't take candy from strangers. But for 8-year-old Leo, his entire world was built on one single, unwavering rule from his mother Sarah. You do not talk to strangers. You do not take things from them. You do not go anywhere with them. Understand? And Leo always understood. He was a good boy. Life for him and Sarah was a frantic but loving rhythm. Their tiny apartment was proof of their bond. Leo's colourful drawings were taped everywhere, fighting for space with stacks of Sarah's nursing textbooks. Sarah was a single mom in constant motion, fueled by caffeine and a fierce, protective love for her son. She worked grueling 12-hour shifts at the local hospital. She'd come home long after sunset, her face etched with a weariness Leo could see even in the dim hallway light, and collapse on the sofa, pulling him into a hug that smelled of antiseptic and pure exhaustion. Leo saw how tired she was. He saw her shoulders slump, how she'd sometimes drift off mid-sentence. So he learned to be quiet. He learned to be self-sufficient. He was a solitary kid, perfectly happy with his sketchbook and the universe of characters he brought to life on paper. The loud, chaotic energy of the playground was just too much for him. His mum was his hero, and that love turned into absolute obedience. He did his homework without being asked. He tidied his room, and most importantly, he followed her rule about strangers. It was sacred. But here's the thing about that rule. It was designed for monsters in the abstract, for shadowy figures in dark alleyways. It wasn't designed for a man every teacher and student saw every single day. The rule had no plan for a monster hiding in plain sight. Mr. Henderson arrived at the start of the school year. He was the new groundskeeper, a quiet, unassuming older man with kind, crinkling eyes and a slow, easy smile that put everyone at ease. He wasn't a stranger. He was Mr. Henderson. He worked at the school, and in Leo's carefully ordered 8-year-old mind, that meant he was safe. Leo first really noticed him because of the old groundskeeper's shed, the one at the far edge of the schoolyard. While the other kids swarmed the jungle gym, Leo would sit on a nearby bench sketching. One sweltering afternoon, he was so focused he didn't even notice Mr. Henderson until the man's shadow fell over his sketchbook. "That's a mighty fine drawing you've got there, son," the man said, his voice gentle. Leo flinched. His mother's rule screamed in his ears, "Don't talk to strangers." But then he looked up. Mr. Henderson was smiling. He wasn't some random person. He was the groundskeeper. "It's just a tree," Leo mumbled. "Looks like more than that to me. You've got a real talent." Mr. Henderson pointed to a small cooler sitting by the shed door. "It's a hot one today. You look like you could use something cool." Leo immediately shook his head. "No, thank you. My mum says not to take things." "A wise woman, your mother," Mr. Henderson said, nodding approvingly. "But this isn't from a stranger, is it? I'm Mr. Henderson." He walked over to the cooler and pulled out a vibrant yellow-orange fruit. "And this is just a mango, the best one from my own tree." He held it out. It was perfect. Leo's mouth watered. Mangoes were his absolute favorite, a rare, special treat. He hesitated, his internal rulebook fighting a battle with the simple, tempting reality in front of him. The man worked at his school. The teachers talked to him. "Go on," Mr. Henderson urged. "A little gift, from one artist to another." Slowly, hesitantly, Leo's hand reached out and took the mango. "There you go," the groundskeeper said, his smile widening. "Enjoy it, Leo." Leo froze. How do you know my name?" "I make it my business to know the names of all the important people at this school," Mr. Henderson said with a friendly wink. "And a fine artist like you is very important indeed." A warm feeling spread through Leo's chest. It was pride. He ate the mango right there, and the sweet, sticky juice felt harmless. It felt like a gift. It felt special. The mangoes became their thing. Almost every afternoon, Mr. Henderson would find Leo and give him a perfect sun-ripened fruit. Predators are masters at identifying and filling a need, and Mr. Henderson had found all of Leo's vulnerabilities. A quiet boy, often alone, desperate for praise and attention. Soon, the gifts turned into favors. The erosion of Leo's boundaries was so gradual, he didn't even notice it was happening. It started simply. "Leo, my boy, could you give me a hand? My back's acting up today. Just need you to help me carry this little bag of mulch inside the shed." Eager to repay the man's kindness, Leo would jump right up. The shed was cool and dark, smelling of damp earth and oil. Inside, Leo felt even more special, like he was being let into a secret world. "You're a strong lad," Mr. Henderson would say, handing him the daily mango. Then he added the words that would change everything. "This is our little secret, all right? Just between us friends." That one word, secret, was a key turning in a lock. It created a bond, yes, but it also started to build a wall between Leo and his mom, a wall between him and the rules of his world. He knew on some deep level she wouldn't like him going into a shed with a man, but the feeling of being chosen, of being special, was intoxicating. But then the favors began to change. They became more personal, more uncomfortable. The isolation was deliberate, ensuring there were no interruptions. Then came the touching. It started with simple pats on the back, then a hand resting on his shoulder for just a little too long, all framed as playful, all designed to desensitize him. One day, Mr. Henderson pulled Leo onto his lap. The hug felt wrong. It was too tight and it lasted far too long. A cold prickle of wrongness crawled up Leo's spine. "What's the matter?" the man asked, his voice losing its gentle edge for just a second. "Aren't we friends?" I have to go," Leo stammered, squirming away. Mr. Henderson let him go instantly, that kind smile snapping right back into place. "Of course, son." He handed Leo a mango, this one even larger than usual. "Don't forget our secret. Friends keep secrets." Leo ran from the shed that day. He threw the mango in a bush as hard as he could. Suddenly, the sweetness had spoiled. He grew quieter at home. The nightmares started. He tried to avoid Mr. Henderson at school, but the groundskeeper was patient. He always found him, always with that same smile and a mango. The sight of the fruit now filled Leo not with joy, but with a cold, sickening dread. The requests in the shed became things Leo didn't have words for, things that made his stomach clench with a shame so heavy he could barely breathe. Mr. Henderson used a twisted language of guilt and manipulation. "This is just what friends do. You wouldn't want to get me in trouble, would you? If you told anyone, they'd take me away from my job." The threats weren't loud. They were quiet, making Leo feel like this was all his fault. He was trapped in a suffocating darkness, all alone. "Leo, where did these come from?" In the oppressive quiet of his bedroom, with the evidence of the rotten fruit between them, Sarah's whispered question hangs in the air. Leo just shakes his head, his eyes wide with a terror she doesn't understand. "Talk to me," Sarah pleaded, her confusion twisting into a knot of real concern. "It's okay. You can tell me anything." But he couldn't speak. The man's voice was coiled inside his head. Asterisk, if you tell, she'll hate you. If you tell, this will all be your fault. Sarah's mind raced. Her mother's intuition, buried for months under layers of exhaustion, was finally screaming at her. She remembered seeing Leo talking to the groundskeeper. She'd even thought it was nice that he was making a friend. The memory now made her physically sick. "Leo?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Was it Mr. Henderson?" The name was the key. It unlocked everything. A single, ragged sob tore from his lips, and then another. His small body began to shake uncontrollably. The dam of his fear and shame finally burst, and the entire horrific story came pouring out. The mangoes, the shed, the favors, the secrets, the hugs that felt so wrong. Sarah stood frozen, the sickeningly sweet smell of rotten fruit filling her lungs. Each word from her son was a physical blow. She realized she wasn't looking at a withdrawn child. She was looking at a victim. The monster wasn't a stranger in an alley. He was a man she saw every single day at school pickup, a man she had smiled at. The monster was the one she had accidentally let in. The silence that followed Leo's confession was the loudest sound Sarah had ever heard. It was filled with her own crushing guilt and a rage so pure it threatened to burn her up from the inside. And then instinct took over. The exhausted nurse vanished. In her place stood a warrior. She wrapped her arms around Leo, holding him tight. "It's not your fault," she whispered, her voice fierce and shaking. "None of this is your fault, do you hear me? You are a good boy. Asterisk. He asterisk is the monster." The rest of that day was a blur of surreal phone calls to the police, to the school principal. The days that followed were an ordeal of sterile rooms and interviews. She had to watch as her 8-year-old son recounted the story to a forensic interviewer, his voice so small it was barely audible. A bottomless guilt began to swallow Sarah whole. How had she missed it? The signs, in hindsight, were all there. She realized she had been groomed just as much as her son, lulled into a false sense of security by a predator who had earned not just her son's trust, but the whole community's. Mr. Henderson was arrested quietly. The news rocked the school. Parents were horrified. He had seemed so kind, so harmless. He had groomed them all. But the arrest wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a long, hard journey. There were therapists and support groups. There were good days and there were very, very bad days. Sarah quit her second job and took on fewer shifts at the hospital. Money was suddenly tight, but she knew her presence was the only thing that truly mattered now. She would sit with Leo for hours as he drew, not his usual heroes and dragons, but just circles, over and over and over. She learned that the most important rule wasn't about strangers, it was about secrets. What happened to Leo and Sarah is a gut-wrenching reminder that monsters don't always look like monsters. They can be teachers, coaches, or friendly faces who twist the trust we give them. It's a reminder of how grooming works and the devastating power of secrets. If you or any child you know has been affected by abuse, please know you are not alone and help is available. You can find support through organizations like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, or the NSPCC. Recognizing the signs is the first step. If this story has moved you, please consider liking and subscribing. Sharing these stories is one of the most powerful ways we can break the silence and protect our kids. Healing is never a straight line. The shed at the edge of the playground was eventually torn down, but its shadow lingered for a long time. Slowly, though, with relentless love from his mother and professional help, the light started to return to Leo's eyes. One afternoon, months later, Sarah found him at the kitchen table. He was drawing again, but it wasn't a knight or a dragon this time. It was a simple picture of two people, a mother and her son, holding hands under a big, bright yellow sun. The trust that was shattered may never be perfectly whole again, but it can be rebuilt piece by piece. The story of the monster a mother accidentally let in is a tragic lesson. It teaches us that we have to be vigilant, yes, but more than that, it teaches us that we have to truly listen to the quiet anxieties and the unspoken fears of our children. Because in the end, the most powerful weapon against the darkness isn't a rule about strangers. It's the unbreakable promise that no secret is too terrible to share and that no cry for help will ever go unheard.